All right, so we're talking a little bit in this video about the Solomonic fiction and about the enjoyment refrain that we see throughout the book. But it's all dealing with one really big question. That is, can you really enjoy anything? Can you really say that anything is to your gain? So in chapter 2, whatever you think, I mean, I'll be excited to see what you say in the in those forum discussions about vanity or hevel. I think it can be taken in both negative and positive ways. But whatever it is, it's nothing substantial in the sense that whatever it is here and gone. But also it's substantial in the sense that it makes up all of life. Everything is hevel. Everything in our universe is in some way this breath kind of thing. So in any event, chapter 2, verse 1, I said to myself, come now, I will make a test of pleasure. Enjoy yourself. And so this person says, well, I'm going to see if I can live like a rock star and end up kind of only having pleasure and gaining really from that. And then, of course, it doesn't work, as we all know. But in verse 4, I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards. This makes this person sound like a king. This person is doing great works, kind of public works projects to kind of make a great name for themselves. But also this person is going to just like try to enjoy things as much as they can. Drugs and rock and roll and sex too. So it ends up not making much of substance for this person. They try to own people. Of course, slavery here is mentioned. Chapter 2, verse 7. This actually, probably important to mention here that the first ever known, or at least that we know of, a Christian abolitionist sermon was preached in the 4th century by Basil of Caesarea, using Ecclesiastes 2:7 to say it's a vanity to own slaves, so you shouldn't do it. It was an Easter sermon, in fact, preached by Basil, and he said that he wouldn't give communion to people who practiced slavery. So this verse has had a big afterlife. Unfortunately, it didn't bring about abolitionist sentiments in the ancient world. But nonetheless, this basic idea is this person is going to have all the kind of trappings of a king, right? Everything that a king could have: control over people's lives, control over their destiny, control over their the king's own kind of royal propaganda, control over pleasure. And so verse 9, it all worked in the sense that this person became great. I mean, it didn't fail, but what did it do, right? I mean, verse 10, whatever my eyes desired, I didn't keep from them. I had whatever I wanted. I did whatever I wanted, and it's kind of a Davidic image in a way. But it was, verse 11, vanity and a chasing after the wind. I love that. I mean, I think a little bit like herding cats or something. And there was nothing to be gained under the sun. And that word gain there in chapter 2, verse 11 is yitron, yet again. There's nothing what do people gain? It's an economic word. It means profit. What profit do people have? Almost like you're trying to account for something on a ledger, like you're trying to zero out like whether or not like the universe has anything positive to it or life has any, but I didn't gain anything from this quest for pleasure, right? Immediate pleasure. And also for like long-lasting a name for myself. This is why I call it the Solomonic fiction. This person kind of leaves this behind, and you don't really hear much about this kind of. I mean, it's almost like a thought experiment. This person said, I'm going to imagine what it would be like to be a king, to have all these things, and it didn't work, right? Then even wisdom, which is interesting. This is a wisdom book, right? But even wisdom is something that ends up not giving you lasting gain in the sense of you can be wise and be upset your whole life. You can be wise and really live a pretty poor life in the sense, not in terms of money, yes, in terms of money, but also in terms of all the other experiences that go along with life. There are, sad, wise people out there. So in any event, this is still not giving Kohelet how can I get a good life, right? A life that kind of ends up meaning something or something like that. So what do people get from all their toil? What do they profit from all their toil? Then I saw verse 24 of chapter 2, right? This is a shift, and this is the beginning of what we get, these kind of refrains. By the way, I've got some ancient Near Eastern stuff here, which I'll pass by, but these kind of, this is the Kilamua stela, where you hear about all these stuff that this king made that was super awesome. And the king said, I'm going to put my nefesh, my soul, into the stela so it can live on, this giant carving, right? But like, we all kind of know that doesn't work, right? So here's the Mesha Stela. Anyway, we'll get back to this stuff later. Some other day we'll talk about the ancient Near East. This is Nineveh, by the way, the Hanging Gardens of Nineveh. Hanging Gardens of Babylon weren't in Babylon. That Babylon was just the name for the kind of general region. This is Nineveh, the capital of Neo-Assyria, which actually had those hanging gardens. And this is the kind of public works projects we see in chapter 2 that the king is mentioning, right? It's kind of like stuff that's going to make a name for yourself and show all the world how great you are. But really, there's no lasting profit from it. That is to say, kings who have this stuff end up being just as sad as anyone else. That doesn't really make you, your life isn't built to, you don't need a forest on a roof to be happy. Well, maybe like for a day or something. Anyway, this is a bit of imagery of the tree of life, which the king's, kind of the king's garden was kind of taking care of the tree of life. That was a big part of it, and so on. I'm going to pass some of this stuff too. All to say, in the ancient Near East, life was short. It was tense. I'm guessing that what we're all feeling these days in terms of mortality was significantly similar to the way that people felt in the ancient Near East more generally. The average life expectancy was somewhere around 25. If you made it past 10, you were lucky to get to 35. So all to say, death was kind of constantly around people. And Kohelet is kind of amazing for two things. One is this refrain about enjoyment. And so in chapter 2, verse 24, after the king kind of amasses all this stuff and amazing experiences and so on, the result is there's nothing better for mortals than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in their toil. This also I saw was from the hand of God. For apart from God, who could eat or who could have enjoyment? So in other words, you can have all the food you want, you can have all the stuff you want, all the wisdom you want, but apart from God, you're not going to have anything. But also, just eating and drinking and finding enjoyment in their toil, not from their toil, but in their toil. Like we all have toil. That is the human experience right there. But can you find enjoyment in your toil? And just eating and drinking. I don't think this means eating and drinking to excess, because that's what the person just did in chapter 2 and said it's no good. That is to say, just common eat and drink. Like, can you just enjoy the little things of your life? And find enjoyment in the midst of your toil. To realize that the entire human existence, our entire existence is predicated upon us kind of always working. And like, just keeping going, kind of like those oceans in chapter 1, right? Or the seas or the winds. We're always moving. We're always hustling in a way. And if you kind of stop hustling, you die, right? I mean, you might be breathing, you might be living, but if you stop thinking about kind of something that you're going to do and get and enjoy, like if you kind of accomplish all that you needed to accomplish, it's kind of sad. You just kind of stop really living. You kind of need to have something else to get you going that you don't have. That is to say, you can't ever grab something or have it or have that gain or that profit and be like, I did it. Because once you did it, you're done. And then you're dead. So death is this like kind of constant theme in Kohelet's work. Right in chapter 1, that poem, like, can you fill up the ear with hearing or the eye with seeing? That is to say, like, there's always something more for us to read, right? Oh, it feels terrible and like, overwhelming and so on. But also at the same time, like, what if you finished reading? Like, what if you read all there was to read? I mean, you'd be dead. There'd be nothing more. What if you saw everything there was to see? There was nothing more. Like you're like, I'm done. Right? That is to say, we have to not have done something in order for us to desire, to want to do something, to want to live. So, in any event, human desire is bound up with death in this interesting inverse relationship. So is enjoyment. Our enjoyment is bound up with our finiteness, our limitations. And part of our biggest limitation is death. And Kohelet is clear about that. This theme of enjoying yourself. This is a refrain. It starts here in chapter 2 and it kind of moves on throughout the book. I'll show you another example of this in a minute, but it's also kind of like paralleled with this like both fear, fascination, but also kind of honesty about death that is constant throughout Kohelet. That is to say, we're going to die. That is something that Kohelet says over and over and over again. That's just going to happen to us, all of us. So, for example, in chapter 3, verse 19, for the fate of humans and the fate of animals is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. We're going to die just like an animal. Sorry, that's just the truth of human existence. Now, it might sound terrible I'm saying this, depressing, sad, even anxiety-producing, that I'm saying that we're going to die. But I got a secret for you, and that is that psychologists have done all sorts of studies on what's called memento mori. So this image, this kind of gruesome image I have here, this is a little locket from the Middle Ages. it's a person's face, and then it's kind of like half a skull. And they would wear these things to show them, remind them constantly throughout the day that they were going to die. Now, why would you do that? This sounds so morbid and terrible, right? But the psychologists have shown, time and again with different studies, that people who are reminded of the fact that they are mortal and they will die at the beginning of the day, by the end of the day, they report that they've had a happier day. That is, they've noticed their family and friends more, their life more. They've probably done something having to do with beauty or noticing the beauty of the world. If you think this is maybe your last meal, you're going to eat it with a little bit more care and concern. You're going to savor it maybe a bit more. So all to say, people who are reminded that they're mortal end up being able to actually enjoy. That's what Kohelet's whole problem, right? Is how do we actually enjoy? How do we actually live a decent life in the midst of all of the stresses and anxieties and crises that we have? So in any event, this is kind of constantly this tension in the book of Kohelet that we are, and then chapter 3, verse 20. This is a great Ash Wednesday kind of theme. All go to one place, all are from the dust, and all go to the dust again. More dust and ashes. So what are we going to do? And then verse 22. So I saw that there was nothing better than that all should enjoy their work, for that is their lot. Who can bring them to see what will be after them? So there's nothing better than to enjoy your work. Okay, so this kind of a theme of enjoyment, I think, is, again, and death are throughout, kind of interlinked throughout the book. The inevitability of death and finding joy in our work. There's some other ancient Near Eastern examples, and I have a handout that I'm not going to make you read this semester, some other time, but there's some ancient poems that are actually kind of amazing for their depth and honesty about death, and the ancients were almost brutally honest about the mortality of human existence and the kind of sadness, but also the tempered joy that can bring, that the knowledge that can bring. There's this beautiful poem called "The Song of the Harper" is on the wall of a tomb in Egypt from about 2000 BC. And you can Google it and read it. It's a beautiful work of art, and a slightly sad one, but also in some ways beautiful. I mean, it's kind of a carpe diem theme. Seize the day, go. Actually live your life, do the things you want to do. And this is also one of the major themes of Gilgamesh. So in one of the scenes of Gilgamesh, it's actually kind of a edited scene of the Book of Gilgamesh. There's Siduri, the alewife. She runs the bar at the end of the universe, and a funny situation, but still. And she is giving advice to Gilgamesh about immortality, and she says, "Don't seek after immortality. Just live your life and really kind of enjoy yourself." And she says something that sounds almost amazingly like a quotation from Kohelet, chapter 9. And so close that many people have suggested that there is a direct link. By the way, these are probably maybe images of Gilgamesh as Gilgamesh and Enkidu, and then Gilgamesh over there with the Lion of Heaven, perhaps at least ancient Near Eastern depictions of the great hero Gilgamesh. So this refrain, let me go to chapter 9 and read this part that really it seems to function kind of like a quotation of Gilgamesh in chapter 9. And it's, again, linked with death. So you see death, and then this part about finding joy and toil, and then death again, coming back to death. So in chapter 9, verse 3 and on, or really verse 1 and on, but this is the same fate comes to everyone, verse 3 says of chapter 9. Moreover, the hearts of all are full of evil madness in their hearts while they live, and after that they go and they're dead. But whoever's joined with all the living has hope, for a living dog is better than a dead lion. All right, so this is Kohelet's thing. Life is really good. It's not Kohelet's not saying death is good, death is bad. But at the same time, knowing that you will die can give some reality and truth to your life, but also some kind of urgency and the possibility of finding actual joy in it. You ever this may be a bad example, but you ever play a video game and all the cheat codes are on and you're like, why am I even doing this? It's not even hard. It's like I can just win the game by pushing a button. It's kind of worthless, right? That is to say that the toil, actually, there's this computer game designers and creators. They actually have to figure out they have to make it hard, and they have to make it even frustrating. Frustration is actually an important part of playing games. Like and a game that doesn't frustrate you, you'll never play. So, but you don't want to frustrate people too much, right? Because then they'll give up in the game, they'll throw it away, burn it, right? But all to say is that this is kind of a finding the right level of frustration and resistance to our desires and so on that we can nevertheless overcome, at least in some ways. Tempered with this knowledge of our finiteness. Finiteness meaning like we're not infinite, right? We have an end. That this can all kind of make our lives have meaning. This, in some ways, actually makes it have meaning. So, all the same, there's this reality about death. But then, verse 7 in chapter 9, go eat your bread with enjoyment and drink your wine with a merry heart. Again, eating and drinking and enjoyment. For God has long ago approved what you do. Let your garments always be white. Do not let the oil be lacking on your head. So get ready to party, put on your party outfits. Enjoy life with the wife whom you love, or we might say the partner whom you love, or whoever. Enjoy your life with your loved ones. All the days of your vain or hevel, breathy life that you are given under the sun, because that is your portion in life, in your toil at which you toil under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might, for there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol to which you are going. I put this image here because there's an interview with the first known all-female body shop and car repair shop in Senegal, and there's an interview on NPR, which I'll put a link to on the site, and it's this wonderful interview about these women saying that this is a difficult work. Working with cars is hard, but also they really enjoy it. They find enjoyment in the midst of this difficult, hard job, and made even harder by gender disparities within the automotive repair and practice, which is no different. Somewhat different, but there's shared difficulties between Ghanaian and American experiences in auto repair services. So all to say that these resistances can create opportunities to actually do something, to succeed, to become who you are, to kind of prove yourself or show yourself, even if they're not good. That is to say, that morally, there's resistance to women working in automotive repair services is terrible. But also, these women have found this to be an upbuilding and uplifting vocation for themselves. So this kind of finding joy in the midst of all this toil and strife is important. For those of you who are searching after justice, it's hard. If you aren't able to find, it's a long road. If you aren't able to find some kind of joy and enjoyment in the midst of the struggle, in the midst of the road. So this is all to say, part of that for Kohelet is just eating and drinking, taking enjoyment in the little things of life. But then part of it also is to remember, verse 10, that you are going to Sheol. So time is short. And then verse 11, we come back to these kind of remarks about death. So here we see this kind of sandwich, right? This death, enjoyment, death sandwich. Maybe some people say it's a crap sandwich, but I do think it's something better than that. Although I'm willing to see what you all have to say. So what I want you to do in the comments here is to respond and just find one of these poems that's about, or one of these bits, one of these little bits that's about enjoyment, and try to look at it in relationship to the surrounding discourse about death or inheritance is something that Kohelet comes back to again and again. And just tell me what you think. How do you interpret these? And do you think this is true? Is this good advice? Do you see this coming true in your own life? Would this fly in your congregations, let's say? All right, I look forward to dialoguing with you all about that.